There are moments in life when we believe we have conquered nature. Moments when we feel that the wild can be domesticated, molded to fit inside the walls of our homes. But nature is not a pet. Nature is power, ancient and untamed. And when humans forget that, tragedy often follows. This is the story of Stefan Gober, a man whose fascination with one of the most dangerous reptiles on Earth turned his sanctuary into a hunting ground, a home transformed into a nightmare that would forever remind us that wild animals are never truly ours to control. 911, what's your emergency? A calm operator's voice breaks the silence of an otherwise ordinary afternoon in the Colony, Texas. But the voice on the other end is trembling, frantic. "Oh my God, I need help," the caller gasps. "It's Stephen. Something's wrong, terribly wrong. He's not moving, and there's blood everywhere." The dispatcher tries to piece together the chaos. "Sir, what's happening? Can you tell me your location? Is anyone else in the house?" And then, a chilling reply. "The Colony. It's Stephen Gober's house." Within minutes, first responders are racing toward a suburban neighborhood that hides a terrifying secret. Imagine for a moment the place you call home, a sanctuary where you should feel safe, where every corner is familiar, every sound predictable. Now imagine that same sanctuary harboring a creature from another era, a relic of prehistoric dominance, capable of lightning speed, bone-crushing bites, and venom that paralyzes its prey before death arrives. What if this creature, once adored, once admired, became the very source of your deepest fear? What if the passion you nurtured your entire life turned into the instrument of your destruction? This isn't a tale of fiction. This is a real story. A story where curiosity met primal instinct, and nature reminded humanity that its power cannot be caged. Stephen K. Gober, 59 years old, wasn't your average suburban homeowner. While his neighbors tended to rose bushes and worried about homeowners association rules, Stephen cultivated something far more exotic. He wasn't just a pet owner, he was an enthusiast, an obsessive conservator of the natural world's most misunderstood predators. His fascination wasn't fleeting. It stretched back to a boyhood spent buried in reptile encyclopedias, daydreaming of lush jungles and untamed wilderness. As he grew, so did his ambitions. Snakes and lizards were only the beginning. His home slowly transformed into a miniature wildlife preserve, each enclosure a testament to his meticulous knowledge and passion. But passion can blind us. Stephen believed he understood these animals, their habits, their needs, their moods. He studied their cues, confident that he had earned their trust. To him, every reptile in his home was not just a specimen, but a friend, a living puzzle designed by evolution itself. Yet, friends do not have serrated teeth. Friends do not stalk prey in silence. Friends do not remind you that under their scales lies a creature forged by millions of years of ruthless survival. In the heart of this suburban jungle reigned one animal above all others, a Komodo dragon. Not just any lizard, but an 11-foot-long, 150-pound apex predator, a living dinosaur in a quiet Texas home. To truly understand what Stephen was living with, you need to understand the Komodo dragon itself. These are the largest lizards on the planet, native to the harsh volcanic islands of Indonesia, creatures that have ruled their ecosystem unchallenged for millennia. They move with unsettling grace, muscular and deliberate, their dark, armored skin a shield evolved over ages of survival. Their gaze is cold, calculating, devoid of warmth, and their mouths, lined with serrated teeth and dripping with venom, are nature's perfect weapon, designed to rip flesh and kill without mercy. Nature's most dangerous weapons are often the ones we cannot see. For years, people believed that the deadliness of a Komodo dragon's bite came solely from bacteria in its saliva, a festering infection waiting to overtake its prey. But modern science has uncovered something far more chilling. Hidden within those massive jaws are venom glands capable of releasing a chemical cocktail so potent it turns a single bite into a slow-motion death sentence. This venom acts like an invisible dagger, thinning blood, dropping blood pressure to fatal lows, leaving the victim weak, dazed, and bleeding out long before they even realize how doomed they are. In the wild, this is nature's masterpiece of efficiency. A Komodo dragon doesn't need to kill fast. It stalks, it strikes, and then it waits, sometimes for hours, sometimes for miles. its forked tongue tasting the air as it follows its victim's scent trail. Eventually, the prey collapses, unable to fight the venom any longer, and the dragon feasts, starting with the softest tissues, methodically tearing apart its meal with terrifying precision. These are not mindless beasts. They are patient hunters, apex predators that evolved to dominate their environment through strength, venom, and an unsettling calm in the face of suffering. Yet here in the colony, Texas, one of these living dinosaurs wasn't roaming volcanic slopes or chasing wild deer. It was locked behind the walls of a suburban home. Stephen Gober believed his years of experience and meticulous care could keep danger at bay, but every interaction with such a creature is a gamble. Even expert handlers admit there's never zero risk. Small incidents, close calls, the tiniest flicker of aggression, they're all warning signs. Maybe a near miss with those serrated teeth brushed off as an accident, or the dragon testing the enclosure's strength with a heavy tail slam. Perhaps Stephen misread a flash of hunger for curiosity, a narrowing of the eyes for calm. Living alongside a predator like this is not a hobby. It's a constant battle of vigilance, where one lapse, one mistake, can cost everything. On October 18, 2019, that cost came due. It was a quiet Friday morning, autumn air cool and unassuming. Stephen entered the room housing his massive Komodo dragon, perhaps to clean, perhaps to feed, doing what he'd done hundreds of times before. But this time, there were no second chances. No neighbors heard cries for help, no frantic struggle echoed through the neighborhood. What unfolded inside those walls was swift, brutal, and merciless. The medical examiner would later describe the wounds. Deep, tearing lacerations on Stephen's neck, the kind only a Komodo dragon could deliver. This was not a warning bite. It was a calculated strike, a primordial attack delivered with terrifying speed and power. Imagine the first moment of impact. 150 pounds of raw, coiled muscle lunging forward, jaws gaping like a living bear trap. The crushing force, the serrated teeth tearing into flesh, pain so immediate and consuming that breath itself feels stolen away. Before Stephen could react, before survival instinct could kick in, venom had already entered his bloodstream, turning seconds into a desperate, unwinnable fight. His body weakened almost instantly, blood pressure collapsing, vision fading. Reports suggest he fell, hitting his head, but that injury was merely an aftershock. The true catastrophe had already been unleashed by nature's perfect predator. The impact of the fall, the venom coursing through his veins, the confusion and sheer terror, it all merged into a nightmare from which Stephen Gober would never awaken. The medical examiner's findings would later reveal the most harrowing truth of all. This wasn't merely an attack. It was a hunt, a feeding. In the cold, instinct-driven logic of a Komodo dragon, an incapacitated human is not a companion, not a caretaker, but prey. The silence in that room must have been unbearable. A chilling stillness broken only by wet, tearing sounds that spoke of an ancient predator doing what evolution had perfected it to do. If Stephen had any breath left in him, they would have been shallow, ragged, desperate gasps as his body betrayed him, succumbing to venom and trauma alike. The creature, unfeeling, unhurried, simply followed the call of nature written in its DNA millions of years before humans ever walked the earth. Later that day, a friend, worried after unanswered calls and messages, arrived at Stephen's home on Longhorn Drive. From the outside, the house looked like any other on the quiet suburban street. The trimmed hedges, the neat driveway, all masking the primal horror within. But the moment the front door opened, the metallic tang of blood hung heavy in the air. And then came the sight no one should ever witness. Stephen, lifeless, his body torn, and beside him the enormous Komodo dragon, a silent sentinel with ancient eyes that betrayed no remorse. The 911 call was frantic, desperate. The operator's calm, professional voice barely cut through the chaos on the other end. Within minutes, emergency services descended on the peaceful neighborhood. The Colony Police Department, paramedics, fire rescue units, and specialized animal control officers. What they walked into was not a typical emergency. It was part crime scene, part wilderness kill site inside the walls of a Texas home. Caution gripped every movement of the first responders. They knew an apex predator was inside, a living weapon weighing over 150 pounds, venomous, unpredictable, potentially agitated after feeding. Officers secured the perimeter, weapons drawn but hesitant, because a single wrong move could turn the scene into another tragedy. Animal control prepared specialized equipment, catch poles designed for reptiles, reinforced cages, and protective gear thick enough to withstand a lunge from jaws that could crush bone. Meanwhile, investigators worked around the chaos. Every blood spatter, every torn scrap of clothing, every mark on Stephen's body was documented. The scene told a grim story of a predator's sudden, lethal dominance. Even seasoned professionals, hardened by years of gruesome cases, found themselves shaken. This was no ordinary fatality. It was as if a fragment of the prehistoric past had erupted violently into modern suburbia. Stephen's body was eventually shrouded and carried out in solemn silence, transported to the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office. His friend, traumatized and trembling, provided what testimony they could, their words punctuated by disbelief and grief. Outside, neighbors gathered behind police tape, wide-eyed, whispering, unable to reconcile the quiet man they knew with the savage end he had met. The autopsy would confirm what many feared. Stephen Gober's cause of death was massive incised wounds to the neck, inflicted directly by the Komodo dragon's razor-sharp teeth. It wasn't an accident caused by a fall, nor a post-mortem interaction. It was a direct, intentional attack from a creature that, once it struck, reverted fully to its primal role as a hunter. The venom, the tearing flesh, the feeding. It all painted a tragic, irrefutable truth. As news broke, the story swept across Texas and then the entire country. Headlines screamed of the bizarre, almost cinematic tragedy. Man killed by pet Komodo dragon in his home. Reporters lined Longhorn Drive, their cameras panning over picket fences and manicured lawns, contrasting violently with the image of ancient, savage nature, unleashed inside one of those homes. Neighbors expressed shock, fear, even anger. Some admitted they had no idea Stephen kept such a formidable creature living mere feet from their children's bedrooms. Others questioned the very concept of keeping wild, dangerous animals as pets. Online, debate raged. Animal welfare advocates and reptile specialists pointed to the tragedy as a warning sign of what happens when human fascination tries to cage forces of nature that were never meant to be tamed. Lawmakers faced renewed calls to ban private ownership of Komodo dragons, giant snakes, and venomous reptiles in suburban neighborhoods. Online forums erupted in the days that followed, filled with heated debates and polarized opinions. Some defended the right of individuals to keep whatever animals they chose, clinging to personal freedom and passion for the exotic. Others demanded immediate, sweeping reforms, insisting that public safety could never be guaranteed when apex predators were kept within arm's reach of ordinary homes. The noise of arguments online, however, could not drown out the quiet grief of Stephen Gober's family and friends. They weren't just mourning his death, they were haunted by the unimaginable way it had happened, and by the relentless media spotlight dissecting every grim detail. The legal outcome didn't involve criminal charges, but the focus quickly shifted to Stephen's surviving animals. Animal control officers, working with experts from accredited sanctuaries and zoological facilities, carefully relocated the Komodo dragon and other exotic species from the property. These creatures were not treated as villains. They were victims of human ambition as much as Stephen himself. Their relocation wasn't about punishment. It was about giving them the secure, specialized environments they were always meant to have. Far from the fragile, human-made boundaries of a Dallas suburb. Behind closed doors, agencies quietly reviewed permits, loopholes, and safety protocols. Internal reports began to circulate, asking hard questions about how something like this could happen, and what laws or safeguards might prevent another life from being lost in such a violent, preventable way. The case became a chilling, cautionary tale, reverberating in legislative halls and public forums alike. A reminder that there is a thin, often invisible line between human fascination and nature's unforgiving force. By all accounts, Stephen Gober was not reckless. He was experienced, dedicated, and deeply invested in the animals he kept. But expertise can only stretch so far when set against millions of years of raw, unchanging instinct. The Komodo dragon that killed him did not act out of hatred or cruelty. It simply followed the primal script that had kept its kind alive since long before human civilization existed. To it, a vulnerable body on the ground was not a caretaker, not a friend. It was prey. This tragedy shatters the illusion that wild power can be fully domesticated. We can build the strongest cages, write the longest manuals, and believe that familiarity equals control. But some creatures are not meant to be owned. Their nature is older than our laws, stronger than our intentions, and far beyond the reach of human bonds. For Stephen, in that quiet house in the colony, Texas, the ancient wildness he had kept contained for years finally surfaced, unstoppable and absolute. It delivered a lesson as brutal as it was undeniable. Nature cannot be tamed simply because we wish it so. The dragon will always remain the dragon, and sometimes inviting it into your home means risking everything. This story should not just linger as shock and horror, it should stand as a wake-up call. Stephen's story is not just about tragedy. It's about the dangerous illusion that wild creatures can ever truly belong in our homes. A Komodo dragon is not a pet, it is a living relic of primal nature, carrying instincts that no amount of affection or training can erase. Stephen's death reminds us that when we blur the boundaries between human curiosity and untamed power, the outcome can be fatal. Not only for us, but for the animals we claim to love. Exotic pets often suffer in captivity, forced into environments they were never meant to endure. And too often humans pay the ultimate price for believing that nature can be caged. The most powerful lesson from this story is simple. Real respect for wildlife means letting wild things stay wild. Admire them from a distance, protect their natural habitats, but don't bring them into a world where neither species is truly safe. If this story moved you, share it, talk about it, and remind others that fascination with dangerous animals should never outweigh safety and respect. Every tragic encounter like this can teach us something, if we're willing to listen.